Okay, good evening. On behalf of Allison Elliott, Mary Beth Kenneth, and We the People Lake Travis, thank you for coming tonight. I would like to start tonight's program and introduce Jenna Burns as she will sing America the Beautiful.
Oh, beautiful. Spacious skies for amber waves of gray, for purple mountains, oh, their majesty.
Thank you, Jenna. If everybody would stand for the Pledge of Allegiance, please. Mayor Kilgore, if you'd lead us in the pledge.
Thank you, everyone. To the best of your ability, please rise with your hand over your heart. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody. I'd like to introduce Supreme Court Justice John Devine to give the invocation. He is our most conservative judge on the Supreme Court in Texas and will be on our primary ballots in March. He must collect signatures to qualify for the ballot, so if you have not signed his petition today, we were circulating it prior to starting this event. Please do so on your way out. Justice Devine.
Good evening. By the way, that was the most angelic tone that I've heard for that version of that song. Well, ladies and gentlemen, I've been asked to come and pray this evening, and I guess I have to say a few words to sort of give some context here, based on just the events that have happened in our country over the last 48 hours, really, to give some meaning to whatever prayer the Lord puts on my heart. None of us had to hear the text of the Durham report to know that what's happened in our country. And it strikes me as ironic that 250 years ago, the founders of our nation were huddled in Carpenter's Hall in Philadelphia on September 7th, 1774. At that time, you understand, the British were cannonading the city of Boston. And our forefathers were faced with the notion that if the British were to win this war, they would be hung for sedition. And so that moment, as they prayed that evening, facing the greatest army in the world, they were invading Boston. Their very lives, their fortunes, their sacred honor was at stake at that time. And here we are today, learning, which most of us already knew, but now the whole world knows, that literally a criminal enterprise runs our country. And that the rule of law, which for me is particularly heartbreaking, since that's my trade, is gone. So I come here with a very heavy heart. And I know, interestingly enough as well, that the city slogan for the city of Boston as a result of that war can be found in 2 Kings verse 5. And it says, and I'm paraphrasing, that as you were to our fathers, may be you unto us. Now, interestingly enough, that's the slogan of the Texas Supreme Court. And it's etched in granite in the front of our bar at the Supreme Court. But bow your heads and pray with me. Father God, we just come here today as a group, I think as the remnant that you have foretold in your scripture and in your word. And Lord, we come here seeking your divine guidance. We come here begging for reconciliation to your will, God. To have a purpose in the days and weeks to come. These people here, Lord, are your remnant. They have already faced tests, God. They have faced the tests and the temptations and the fears that the government has tried to impose on them. The restriction of their liberty. They're taking away from their church and their right to assemble. The destruction of free speech. The destruction of the rule of law. Lord God, it surrounds us. Father, we pray for an extra measure of wisdom and discernment as we listen to our speaker tonight, who, Lord, is at the tip of the spear. And we lift her up. We lift up Jennifer as the leader of this group and one of the founders, and all the founders of this group, because they will be demonized in the future. And so, Lord, we thank you for those here gathered. We ask that you gird them up, Father, with your armor to take on those forces. And make no mistake about it, it's a spiritual war. And it's a spiritual war the likes of which that none of us, unfortunately, have ever seen before. But it's a treasure, Lord God, to be trusted by you, to be here at this time. Think of it, Lord God. We're here. You have trusted us to be here at this time in history as our nation undergoes the travail of our past. Lord, we thank you for these things. We do so, of course, at the foot of your Son's cross and by his blood. Amen.
Amen.
Thank you, John. I get emotional when I see so many like-minded patriots in one room, and I love to see new faces. This should be a reminder that none of us are alone in our demand for truth and justice. Lara is about to bring some truth. We the people, Lake Travis, seeks to cultivate citizens who are informed, engaged, and vote in every election. This is only one event that we have done this year, and I hope you will connect with us at wethepeoplelaketravis.com for future engagement. I hope each of you saves the date for our biggest event every year, which is the Saturday between early vote and Election Day in November, at which we celebrate our donors, volunteers, election workers, and candidates. We're planning for 500 Patriots this year. You all will get a personal invite, and please come and bring our friends. I pray the reason that you are here tonight is not only to fellowship with other like-minded patriots, but to become a more informed citizen and voter. America has an enemy, and we cannot sit back and do nothing. Our broken public schools, our open border, and our seemingly weak legislature demand our action. We must rebuff the lies with the truth at every turn and be brave and courageous. We cannot politely stay quiet, hoping destruction will not hit our front door. It is at our door. Activism starts locally and is where you can, local activism starts, hold on, sorry. Activism, oh no, I typed out my notes, I still can't get it right. Activism starts locally and is where you can be a partaker in actual wins for liberty. I know at times you may feel defeated, but locally and together, we remain strong. Real quick, President Trump sent in a message of welcome, humor, and thanks to our donors. He could not be here tonight, but I know he would want his... He is busy. He could not be here tonight, but I know he would want his statement read by someone who could deliver the message like he would. Izzy Zuela, would you make it to the stage?
This is very short, okay? This is very short. I remember this was for Little Mike. Remember him? What a loser. Well, we have some people that we have to mention that, frankly, make this whole thing happen, okay? This is just like Joe, okay? This is Joe's list, okay? That's what he gets, right? So I have to mention Allison, where is she? Allison Elliott. Mary Beth Guinness, she's fantastic, okay, it's true. Jennifer Fleck. And I like to say the fireball of Lakeway, okay? The organizers have made a beautiful time. Izzy Zuela. I don't know who the hell that guy is, okay? I don't know who he is. Leanne Zuela, she's much nicer, okay? Way nicer. Catherine Chamber, where is she? Where are you, Catherine? You know, it's true. Catherine gave more wine than even Crazy Nancy could drink, okay? Crazy Nancy with the eyebrows, okay? She looks like Michael Jackson, okay? Look at this thing. And then we have Pocahontas, and Pocahontas keeps chasing her. Even her husband doesn't want to have beer with her, okay? Pocahontas with the high cheekbones, okay? She says she's a bit embarrassing, okay? Sad. Lisa Barrett, where are you? Jeanette Johnson. You think about it, All the conservative women are so beautiful, okay, when you go to the other side. I don't think so, okay, I don't think so. Jen and Dawn Madigan. Hopefully I didn't screw that up, but it's much easier to say than boot edge. Everybody knows boot edge. Alfred E. Newman, Mad Magazine. It's true. Fred Dupuy, he's in charge of sound. And he has a beautiful podcast called The Lake Way, okay? Scott Foster. Finally somebody who knows what the hell they're doing with sound. We have to fire the other guy who's a total loser. We have to fire his ass. But I like Scott, okay? Fantastic. Linda and Ken Bosch. Terrific people. None of that would have happened without them, okay? It's true. And finally, I know there was a laptop when you all got here. There was a laptop. I don't know if it's a laptop from hell, but I hear that Hunter is getting a brand new laptop from Russia. Maybe China. We'll see, okay? But I heard that Sleepy Joe is getting him a brand new laptop for Christmas, okay? They're bringing Christmas back with a laptop. You know, Chris, Sleepy Joe with the hairy legs, okay? He said he has hairy legs. The guy that ruined our border. We used to have catch and release, and now we have scratch and sniff. But I don't know, but where's Hunter? Where is he? I don't know what he's doing. He's probably doing something not very nice. Well, they said we can't fill up the room, okay? They said, oh, you know, you're not going to get anybody to come here. And I said, I don't think so, you know. When Sleepy Joe had his rallies, they say, he had big circles around him, and frankly, we had circles around him, okay? But you came from everywhere. You came from the hills. You came from the prairies. Bright-eyed and bushy-tailed. It's true, okay? It's true. I have to go now because I have to fix our country. What they've done to our country, total disgrace. Lara, she's going to give you a fantastic night. Where's Lara? Lara speaks the truth and only the truth, okay? Nothing but the truth. Unlike the fake news, all they do is the Russia hoax, okay? The hoax. It was all bullshit. Blue Coffee, if you're in the house, where are you? If elected president, I'm going to pardon you from all the things that you haven't done, okay? It's true. We're going to make our country great again, believe me. And I'm going to take care of the cartels, okay? We're going to do what we've done to ISIS. We're going to bomb the shit out of them, okay? Just saying. But I have to go now. God bless Texas, because way to think about it. Texas is America. You've got Texas, then you've got all the losers outside, okay? Lara, you're going to do fantastic, I know it, okay? And she's going to talk about things and big things. Because frankly, they say that Lara Logan has no agenda. I hope she has an agenda to talk about something very sleepy, very stupid, okay? And his stuff, we'll see. Lara, have a great, fantastic evening. Thank you so much. God bless Texas.
There is nothing left. Any direction you walk, all you find is more destruction.
Thousands of angry Somalis
and heavily armed gunmen were locked in an intense battle with the Americans.
We were caught in an ambush with his troops along the frontier.
So it was a policy of total annihilation.
Do you think they will attack you before you attack them? How many shipwrecks do you think are down there?
You've been described as the greatest American rock band. Is that how you feel?
Are you among the last people on Earth to speak this language?
And if you look at the US, what are you most worried about here? This is traditional Yakuza turf. They run everything here, from the girls to the sex to the drugs.
Did you care if the species goes extinct? Does that mean anything to you?
Yes, I did.
Why do you want to kill them?
Derek and Beverly took us deep into the Delta to see the lions.
What is it like to be charged by a lion? Is that what a mother chimp would do?
No.
Only Mama Jane.
Coney rules by fear and claims he has mystical powers, a formidable combination in the minds of the children he kidnaps.
You were part of an army that taught children to kill, where young girls were raped.
All these people who are doing atrocities do it under constant instruction.
Including you.
Yes.
The most obvious thing when you look at these walls is that it's all men. Up there is the past directors. And you went from 0 to prime minister in about 8 years. So were you high? Were you using it?
Oh
then?
yeah, I was.
And that's why you fell?
I was.
But the bed would be right there in the middle.
Yeah. And you'd all sleep in one bed?
We'd all sleep in one bed.
Happy memories?
The best.
What happened to a lot of the other kids that were on the streets with you?
Well, unfortunately, a lot of my friends are either dead or in jail.
What kind of soldier are you?
I'm average. I'm mediocre.
This is the single greatest honor that the military can bestow on its own. And it comes right from the President of the United States himself. That's pretty good for a mediocre soldier.
Think how good the great soldiers are.
Thank you so much, everybody. Thank you, Yvette. Wow. So this is quite something. Mary Beth and Jennifer and Allison really, with the, I know this will shock you all, but with sheer force of will, they made this evening happen. It's quite extraordinary to see those three women in action and what they're able to do. And to see so many of you who have come here, some of you I know from other places, one gentleman came from Dallas. People have come from a long way. And on the one hand, I'm flattered. And then on the other hand, let's face it, you don't have a lot of options. Yeah, okay. You'll be pleased to know I spoke to Tucker when he was going, through the whole separation, and he told me it was quite amusing, actually. He was not fazed in the least. And some time ago, I was up in Maine at his studio doing an interview with him before I was canceled by Fox, and I said to him at the time, the Murdochs must really like you because you're still here. How is that possible? And he said to me, oh, it's just a matter of time. So he knew then, and honestly, at that moment, I had everything I wanted at 60 Minutes. I'm a journalist. I don't want to be an editor. I don't want to be an anchor. I don't want to run my own company, or I don't want to do anything else. Like, I was born to tell other people's stories in a way that mattered. I was born to be the voice for people who are denied that. I was born to be the voice for Luke Coffey. How many of you, when you heard that name tonight, had no idea who's Luke Coffey?
What's he going to be pardoned from that he didn't do? That's why I'm here, because you should know Luke Coffey's story. Because Luke Coffey stood on the steps of the Capitol with a crutch over his head, praying and begging people to stop. And for that, he's facing 20 years in federal prison. How many of you didn't want to know about January 6th? How many of you have donated to any of the people fighting for a fair trial or lawyer? Sorry. I forget how old people are when they come here. How they feel. I'm sorry. Did I see that? I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. Okay. It's frustrating if you can't hear. My children do say I'm going deaf, so I should understand that. But this is a very serious question. Because if you want to know what can I do, I want to tell you right now, one side in this fight, and it appears to be one side, right? But by the end of this evening, you'll see that there isn't one side like that. But for now, let's play along. So if you're on the left, if you're a Democrat, you have no shortage of funding sources. So activism has been turned into a full-time job. You go to college, become a lawyer? No, you're not really a lawyer. You're an activist, right? You establish a company, have a corporation. Are you really, is Bud Light making a business decision? No, they're making a political decision, right? It's not good for their business, but they're not backing down, are they? So that's not a business decision. When you have a company coming into Fredericksburg, Texas, where I live, bringing 200 hotel units, 2,500 jobs, and you look them up on the internet, and they have offices in Nigeria, Venezuela, and the Philippines, it's not a real development, is it? No, that's a forced diversification program, how you insert people into rural communities, right? And you, that's how you make it true what Bernie Sanders' spokesperson said in 2016 when he said, I want every American to know that the days of milk white America are over. And the future of this nation is diverse. And I thought at the time, wow, that's very interesting. I wonder how imminent that is. You know, just out of curiosity, because it sounded so certain. And so I spent some time looking up, and it was harder than it should have been, considering you have the CIA fact book, which has a listing for every country in the world, including the population figures and the population breakdown. So I thought that would be easy to find. It took me a long time to find it on the internet. And that's a very significant point I'm going to come back to. But I did find it eventually and found that America's population is roughly 75% white still. That was in 2016. Well, interestingly, that didn't seem so imminent then. Fast forward to today, 15 million illegal immigrants since Biden took office, 10 to 15 million in 2 years, depending on who you talk to. I veer towards the 15 million number because of the people where I'm getting that from. Well, how many of those people were white? I know nobody likes to talk about this, right? Very uncomfortable. We don't want to talk about race because, God forbid. But I spent my entire life. I fought against apartheid. I don't have prejudice bone in my body. I never have had. So I'm not going to apologize for the conversation because this is the last chance for humanity. That's where we are. That's where we are really. This is the last chance for humanity. And we don't have an open window of time to win this fight. And if it's lost, it's over. That's the end of humanity. And so that sounds very, I don't know, conspiratorial or too grandiose or too far-fetched, then I can't help you. Sorry. I can't because I don't have time to help you. It's up to each and every one of us to do our part and to help each other, right? If you're willing to stand in the trenches with me, you got me 100%. If you don't want to be there, I'm not going to make you. God gave us free will. It's the dividing line between God and Satan, right? I mean, if you look at it, if you look at the religion, the satanic religion, free will is not at the top of the list. No, you have to follow its traditions and rules, and everything is about taking away your free will. And
Why do I mention this? Well, because we are looking at the forced diversification of this country. And you may be thinking, well, I feel bad for these people and I don't want to be seen as prejudiced or racist, and everybody deserves a second chance, and all of that is true. I would agree with all of that. But what you're looking at is not designed to benefit the people coming across the border. It's not designed to benefit the people in this country. You are looking at the largest slave trade in history of the world. We've never seen anything like it. And we're not just talking about debt bondage, right, where people are enslaved because of what they owe, and labor slavery, and sex slavery. I mean, we are talking about the insertion of an army that is the most violent army that the world will ever have seen. If you look at Mexico, that's what I'm talking about. The cartels are the army of the globalists. And the policy of this administration on the border is the policy of the globalists. What am I talking about? Well, go to the United Nations website and look at their policy on global migration. They don't talk about legal and illegal immigration. They talk about immigration they talk about migration as a human right. So words matter, right? We know words matter, but what I'm here to tell you is this is 5th generation warfare, which is a war of narratives. So in a war of narratives, words matter more than normal, right? They matter much more than normal. So we have to really pay attention to the words, because the words are a roadmap to where we're going and what is actually happening. You all see the immediate effects. You see it on Twitter, you see it in your schools, you see it in your communities, you see it on television, you see it in the commercials that are on TV. You see it all around you, but you may not understand fully the bigger picture, right? So that's part of what I am able to do. I live in the moment. I try to be there and see it for myself. I try to experience and witness firsthand. When I can't, those are the people I see. But then I have been prepared all my life for understanding how those pieces fit together. Because I have an open heart and an open mind, I am not closed to anything. So I have learned, and I have been blessed with discernment. So that doesn't make me, I'm not superhuman, but my bullshit meter is really quite accurate. It's extraordinary. And why does that matter? Because every one of you has strengths in this room, and every one of you has a role to play if you choose to play it. Your role is not to stand on the banks of the river and watch humanity drown. I mean, you can if you want to, and if you're too afraid to do anything else, or you have too many other considerations, and you keep thinking, I'm going to do something, but I'm just not sure what it is yet. Well, I'm here to tell you that time is short. And you know that's true because you feel it and you see it every single day. So think about this, Agenda 2030, right? As you all know, Agenda 2030 is the agenda of the World Economic Forum, what they want the world to look like by 2030. Well, you know, that's night and day compared to where we are now, right? It's complete opposite. I mean, they want basically the end of air travel, the end of agriculture, the end of private ownership of land, the end of private ownership of vehicles, the end of a fossil fuel economy. I mean, so you don't get there overnight. So by 2028, 2026, I mean, we're getting closer and closer to those goals. That's what ESG scores for the environment and for companies are all about. That's what 15-minute cities are all about. You know about 15-minute cities, right? I don't want to bore you. I know this is very well, I know a lot of people here are very awake and you follow all this stuff. But so think about that trajectory to get to a completely and utterly unrecognizable world by 2030, we got to go on an upwards trajectory. And that's what you're feeling. I would argue, so the good news is, for all of you who wonder, are there white hats out there? Are there any good guys? Are they doing anything? I'll bet there's a couple here tonight. Yeah. But as I told my husband the other night, I hate your covert war. I hate it because it doesn't feel like we're doing anything. It doesn't look like we're doing anything. It doesn't look like we're winning, you know? It basically looks like we're standing in the ring with Muhammad Ali taking a pounding. And it's relentless. And it never, ever, ever ends. And I turn this way, I turn that way. Are you kidding me? I mean, have you seen the books? Oh, Fredericksburg ISD, teaching young kids, what does one book say? Do Papa Gaines teach you how to eat, you know, female parts? No, but he showed me how to eat butthole. Really? Yeah, that's in our books in Fredericksburg ISD. And when we try to get them out, they call us radical and extreme. Radical and extreme. So when we ask the local newspaper to print those excerpts from those books, what do you think they say? Oh no, we can't do that. It's a family newspaper, right? Couldn't possibly do that. Couldn't possibly do that. But it's totally fine for our children in our middle school to have access to those books. And they don't just have access, because if you're paying attention, the librarians got them on display in the front, you know, and they're pushing it, pushing it, pushing it. And, you know, in Fredericksburg, they took out an advert in our local paper, full page advertisement. And it was all about how the parents opposing this are extremists, and this is not really pornographic, and so on. And it was signed, Concerned Parents of Fredericksburg ISD. But it was really paid for by the DNC Gillespie County. So that brings me back to where I began. There is no money in the fight. That's just a fact. There's no money in the fight on this side. Nobody wants to give too much away. Everybody's feathering their nest. It's great that you're growing stuff and that you have stockpiled water and maybe batteries and communications, and that's great. You're going to be okay. No, you're not. There's not going to be a world. There's not going to be a world. How long is your food stockpile and your chickens, how long are they going to keep you alive? I mean, maybe if you're very rich and you have a lot of land, you've got cows, you've got deer, maybe you've got access to water. What do you got, 6 months? In a world with no supply lines? A year at the most. Most of us, a month, if we're lucky. Maybe 2. Maybe you got a whole bunch of those MRE kind of packages that they sell online, right? But think about it. What do we really need to survive? Well, we need medicines. How much have you stockpiled of your medicines? What if anybody got diabetes? Anybody got kidney issues? I mean, what about just basic infections? What about batteries? And the generator that you got, what does that run on? Oh, good luck. Good luck. So what am I really saying to you is that it's an illusion if you think that that is going to save you. What is going to save all of us, first and foremost, is God. Right? As my friend Trennis Evans from Condemned USA, January 6th defendant, said to me, God doesn't give you a shovel so he can dig the hole. He gives you a shovel so you can dig the hole, right? And that's what we're supposed to do. But the only way we can do it is what, was it, you even know, I think it was Jennifer, said, look to the person to your left and look to the person to your right and make sure you know them. If you've ever been in combat, you know what that means. I don't have any difficulty understanding the concept. I know we have a World War II veteran here. Where is that gentleman? Could he stand? Flew aircraft in Vietnam. Is he here? Thank you. When you've been in combat, you know, okay? It's not the color of your high heels that count. It's not your, your penchant for stealing luggage from airports. Yeah, you know what I'm talking about. Sam Vinton, in charge of disposal of nuclear waste for the Biden administration, who's now, thank God, no longer in the administration. It's not about dressing up to go to work and wearing lipstick with your uniform. I mean, for crying in a bucket, okay? Every enemy we have is just salivating. And actually, they're not just salivating. You know what they're doing? They're infiltrating across the southern border. That's what they're actually doing. And that's just one thing that they're doing. So, what I want you to leave here with tonight is an understanding of the bigger picture, and also a certainty that the only way through this is community. The only way through it is local. You talked about it, Jennifer, but I don't think people really understand the scale of that. Like, when I say that, it's not just about being nice to your neighbors, right? It's really about local law. It's really about, with Trennis Evans, I'm filming a series of reports on January 6th right now, and I was filming with Trennis Evans, who's a January 6th defendant. He pled guilty to a misdemeanor. They tried to slap a federal charge on him. He told them to go, take a hike. And they actually did, because the man knows the law, and he knows the Constitution, and he tortured the judge. He spoke for an hour and 53 minutes at his own sentencing hearing. When I say torture the judge, I'm not kidding, okay? He's extraordinary. And one of the things he did when he was arrested, right, is when he was released, he filed a report for abduction and kidnapping by the federal government. Because, yes, the local sheriff in Canyon Lake said, you can't do that. And he said, oh, actually I can, and the subsections, blah, 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 right? And that's what I'm talking about. In this country, lest we forget, right? This was an economic and security union. That's what this was. This was, we're safer if we have a union. We're safer from our enemies. But this was not, we will be ruled by a king. This was never that. And so if you go back to the law and you go back to the Constitution, you will find what I'm talking about. And by the end of this, you will see why this matters. Not just because Bud Light puts some confused, delusional, psychotic maniac on their beer can. And I don't mean to be offensive to anybody who is genuinely confused, and I don't have anything against anyone doing that. Just don't shove it down my throat. I'm done. You shove it down my throat, I'm going to shove it right up your, what. Okay, that's where it's going. It's going right back at you on a nuclear trajectory, by the way. Yeah, because I got a little Sicilian and I got a little African in me, so watch out. Okay, and what I'm talking about is, when I talk about that trajectory, what I mean is, we don't have a cut on our leg at the southern border. They took the jugular, right? And they just cut it. I mean, we're bleeding out. This country is bleeding out. We have in Plainview, Texas, a 6-year-old girl who was sitting at a table in her classroom, and she had 4 other 6-year-old boys. One of them knocked her off her chair, dragged her under the table by her hair, and then forced her face into his crotch and told her to perform oral sex on him. While the other boys cheered, and one of them picked up a school iPad, she tried to sit up, and he forced her down again after opening his pants, and he forced the 6-year-old girl to perform oral sex on him. One of the boys involved was found out by the family, would bring his dad's iPhone to school, and the kids would watch pornography on his dad's iPhone. This is called grooming. That's what that's called. And it's happening in our schools. I'm not sure if that's the worst part of the story. I mean, that is truly horrific. But there's a few things that are just as awful. First of all, when I called a friend in Texas DPS, he said, In the state of Texas, under 10 years old, consensual. Civil, not criminal. Civil, not criminal. No, you can't commit a crime if you're 10 years old or under. State of Texas, I'm like, they filmed it, the teacher was in the classroom, did nothing. The school did not even tell the family what happened. I mean, there's other details that you can find online. The cousin of the 6-year-old girl, very articulate, I'm in touch with her, and the family is fighting. The school ISD, I mean, the head of school didn't have time to meet with the family. They brought in an investigator who took this little girl off on her own. Not allowed to do that. Look at the law. She took this investigator was a strange man. They didn't even know who he is. The families asked him over and over again. This whole first interview happened without the family's knowledge. The school is doing nothing to assist. In fact, what they did is call in the FBI because they said they were getting threats, and now they were afraid for their own safety. The FBI deemed it a consensual sexual act between minors. Yeah. This little girl, the family only really figured out something was going on when this little girl became withdrawn, stopped eating, I mean, extreme distress. And, the next day, I think, or a couple days later, one of the little boys exposed himself to her in the lunch line. I mean, the behavior that is going on and being enabled and encouraged is beyond horrific. And I couldn't get anybody interested in law enforcement. Imagine that. So it's not enough that it's happening. It's that our leaders don't care. I texted the lieutenant governor. I sent him reports on it. I said, are you tracking this? He said, yes, I am. Have you seen any intervention from the lieutenant governor or the governor or the attorney general? I mean, basically, I was told by my friends in law enforcement, people I know, I consulted on this, they said the only way you're going to get anyone to do anything about this is if there is, pressure on the Richter scale. And he said, and it's not even a blimp. So that is in Plainview, Texas. In, is it Leandra, Texas? Where the kids are acting out as furries and crawling around in class, they're being led on a leash. I mean, there's Satanism in the schools just outside of Fort Worth. It's all over the place. So I'm not sure what you need to understand the gravity of this moment. What else do you need? I mean, 15 million people across the southern border in just over 2 years. Where are those people going to go? The schools are overwhelmed. Law enforcement is overwhelmed. First responders are overwhelmed. Why does Texas DPS not care? Because they've got so many murders. Because the cartels have poured into this country. And I know that you all know, take a look at what's happened in Mexico. We have a narco state. It's a narco-terror state. The AMLO government works for the cartels. The only reason the cartels don't seize power is that it suits them. It suits them not to have to carry out the functions and the business of running the government. It's not because they can't. It's not because they're not already in control. It's because it doesn't fit their objectives. And I asked a man who infiltrated the global cult, as he calls it, at the UN level, in the Middle East faction. Very interesting that there are factions for every part of the world. Of course there are. And what did he tell me? He said the cartels are the physical manifestation of what this world looks like without God. But in the meantime, the cartels are the army that the globalists don't have. And they are partnered with the Chinese. They're not separate, they're partnered. The Chinese have sent their people into the tripartite region in Latin America for decades. They have married into the cartels. You know, when Trump realized that we had a problem with fentanyl and he went to Davos and he said to Xi Jinping, you got to ban fentanyl. And Xi Jinping said, yes, sure, of course. Why? Because they had already, fentanyl began as a mail-order drug sent from China. And they had already outsourced the production of fentanyl and the distribution to the cartels and the production. They didn't want it because the Chinese are practicing drug warfare. If you go back to the Opium Wars in China, when the Chinese lost the Opium Wars to the British, It's because the British brought in opium from India into China, which had its own opium, and using drug warfare, they were able to defeat the Chinese. They've never, ever forgotten that lesson. I had tea in a little Chinese tea shop with Jack Ma, who founded Alibaba. Everybody knows him, the Chinese billionaire. And Jack Ma said, "You know why I brought you to this tea shop?" And I said, "Tell me." He said, "Because the tea you're drinking is more than 2,000 years old." I didn't know tea could survive that long, I gotta be honest. But I was like, first I'm thinking, I hope I survive this. It is China, not the cleanest country on earth, I'll just be honest, it's not. If you've ever, been to Shanghai and places like that, you'll see for yourself. And he said to me, "You Americans don't understand. We think in terms of thousands of years. You think in terms of minutes and days and weeks. You want everything now. You don't understand the long game." And they've been playing the long game for a very long time. And that long game is now accelerating. We've gone from ambiguity increasing, right? When there was a huge amount of deception and we didn't see things for what they were. And now we're in the phase in information warfare of ambiguity decreasing. And what that means is that we can see what is happening. They're revealing themselves. And they're revealing themselves because the deception is no longer necessary. Because we're moving into a much darker place. A much, much darker place. And what that place really looks like is when this war of narratives is our last opportunity to fight for humanity. Sixth generation warfare, where we're moving, is where artificial intelligence becomes sentient. Actually, there's some overlap between fifth and sixth generation warfare. There's something called Golem AI, which is already sentient, in the sense, what does sentient means? It's basically where artificial intelligence without any human input is able to find, AI is able to find other AI and to learn from each other without any human intervention, such as one AI from Golem just taught itself a new language from other AI with no human input. So some of that is already happening. But when artificial intelligence is fully sentient, that is sixth generation warfare completed. Seventh generation warfare, right? What does it mean, fully sentient? Well, there's a program, an AI program called AlphaGo, G-O, where AI has taught itself to play the Chinese game Go. Then there's the next Alpha program where AI has taught itself other skills. And then what they're working on right now, the one that you really have to worry about, is Alpha Intimacy. And Alpha Intimacy is where they take every single data point about you. How long you spend on a certain site. Did you hover? Did you go directly to something? How many hours you spend on your phone a day? How much friction there is in your household? What you shop for? If you're one of those people that says, "Well, I don't care if I get commercials that are tailored to me. If I don't want to buy it, I don't have to buy it. What's the big deal?" Well, you're an idiot. Sorry. You're an idiot because you're missing the point. The point is not that you have the choice of buying it or not. The point is that you are being surveilled 24/7. Every minute of every day. We are already at a point where people don't want to give up their phones, right? We don't want to give up our phones. We don't want to give up our iPads. We don't want to give up our laptops. I'm just as guilty. I am no different. In fact, now we're at the point where we don't know how to give them up. You can't apply for a job at 90%, maybe even 95% of establishments, unless you do it on your phone or your iPad or your computer. You can't apply for a visa to the United States if you don't have access to a computer. In fact, you have to fill out each page, has to be 100% accurate. When that page is gone, you can't go back. And you have to do the whole form in one sitting. I literally try to help a woman in Africa get a visa. It took her 2 days to walk from the village to get to a city where she could get to a place where she could use a computer. I mean, she had no chance of getting a visa to this country. None whatsoever. We tried over and over and it never ever happened. So we don't even know how to separate from computers at this point. You know, if you're driving a car and it tells you that your tire pressure is low, do you know how it knows that? Because it's a computer sensor in your tire. So there's like 400 different surveillance devices in your vehicle. It's not just one, there's countless. You go to buy a smart dishwasher. Well, your smart dishwasher is reporting to someone what setting you use, how much water that takes, how often you run your dishwasher. It's not hard to see now, ambiguity decreasing. On the other side of that, we see why that now matters, right? Because this is the first time, did you see the headlines? This is the first time the state of Texas has not produced enough electricity, not enough power to survive what our power requirements will be over the summer. Well, how does that relate? Oh, well, first of all, that's because we went to green energy, because Governor Abbott and the others sold us down the river, right? They took the money for the green energy programs, none of which do anything. I mean, you get a little bit from wind and solar, sure, but a little bit. Okay, renewables, BS. Sorry, that's what it is. So, what happened? Well, we didn't invest anymore in our gas infrastructure and in nuclear power. So now we don't have the power that we need. Well, why does that matter? Well, because your smart thermometer, right, that you have in your house can be remotely controlled. So they will set the temperature, they'll turn it on, they'll turn it off, they can do whatever they want. Why do we need so many 5G towers? They're everywhere. So let me see this. We're in a time where people care so much about the environment, we have to slaughter farm animals and take away agriculture. But we can put towers everywhere that destroy the landscape. We don't worry about that. What does that tell you? It tells you that the goal is not as stated. Because in fifth generation warfare, the narrative doesn't have to reflect the truth, right? That's part of the deception. But as we move towards, by the time we reach seventh generation warfare, it's over. Seventh generation warfare, where you have those data points that they're developing in alpha intimacy, are creating a digital you for every single person on the planet. We already have digital yous. They're just not fully sentient yet. But when they are, your digital self will be indistinguishable from your real self. That's literally what we're looking at. So look up online, you can find it, it's not difficult. They're now building, we all know what a hologram is, right? Holograms are amazing. It looks and sounds like you, but I mean, you can put your hand through it, right? It's just an image. The holograms of the future is your digital you, and it will have flesh, bone, skeleton, muscle. It'll have everything. That's what they're building right now. They've already built the exoskeleton with the bone, and they're working on the layers of muscle and tissue and everything else that goes on top of it. Now, if they're putting out that that's what they've done, you could bet they're 20 years ahead of that. Because by the time it reaches us, it's at least 20 years old for all technology. So you hear people like Ray Kurzweil, one of the co-founders of Google. I'm sure you've heard him speaking about smartphones, holds up the phone. The phone is, this connects you to the brain of the world, right? Think about it, the internet, all these brains all over the world on the internet. So here's your phone, it connects you to the brain of the world. Well, Ray Kurzweil can stand at Davos, and he can stand at TED Talks, and at the World Economic Forum, and he's celebrated for telling people that in the near future, your phone will no longer be separate from your body. What does that mean? Well, because we won't need to interface from the brain to the phone to the internet. We're going to cut out the middleman, and we're going to go straight from your brain to the internet. That's what the Internet of Things is. We are the things. We are the things. And Yuval Noah Harari, who's the scientific advisor to Bill Gates and to the World Economic Forum, he says, right, that in this revolution, we are hackable. Humans are now hackable, right? And that COVID ushered in the era of mass surveillance. So they got all of us used to the idea of mass surveillance and used to the idea of surveillance under the skin. How many of you have a dog? You've taken it to the vet, it's been chipped, right? How did the vet chip it? So the syringe, the liquid nanoparticles. So why is it so crazy and conspiratorial to say we will be chipped? They're already in Sweden, they already are chipped. People contactless payments. 3 years, Austin Airport has not taken cash. 3 years. Right here in Austin. When you now travel in airports across the US, you'll see those local kind of 7-Eleven, type of stores in the airports. They now have a normal store where you can walk in and pay, and they have another store just across the way where you have to scan your debit card to gain access to the store. What if you don't have a debit card? Well, you don't need it. Right? So now in the future, it's not going to be the debit card. Just like the way they're going to take your phone away, they're going to take your card away. You'll have that chip in your hand, and you just do contactless payments. And by the way, you're going to be thrilled. It's so much healthier and safer because you don't have that dirty money. Oh, remember that during COVID when they got rid of cash in lots of places? It didn't come back. They didn't. That's when they kept talking about the new normal, the new normal, the new normal, because we're being pushed, kicking and screaming. But the bad part is, this is the part that they leave out of the conversation at the World Economic Forum. Psychological manipulation. Right? What they can deliver through artificial intelligence in terms of psychological weapons is the equivalent of a nuclear bomb, according to Lieutenant General Michael Flynn. He wrote an article on it in the Western Journal about a month ago. That's literally how significant it is. You're dealing with a whole lot of them right now. There's lots of these psychological weapons that are driven by artificial intelligence, affecting and manipulating our behavior. And they drive you towards making certain choices. So if you've ever wondered, they're not going to get me to eat insects. Oh yeah, they are. They're not going to get me to accept socialism. Oh yeah, they are. Because they are working on artificial intelligence that persuades you to do something or to agree with something. It's manipulation on a global scale. And if you look at Russia and China and Iran, they are not countries that are receiving these psychological weapons. Maybe Russia, to a degree, but China, no. They're a closed society. So we're having these weapons launched at us by every country in the world, and we're doing nothing to protect our citizens against it, because we have elements within this country who seek the same outcome. I'm tired of telling people that in Afghanistan they gave away our strategic advantage by putting $80 billion worth of weapons in the hands of terrorists. And they said, well, why would they do that? Well, for crying in a bucket, why are you asking me? I didn't do it. So I'm supposed to give you an answer that you can say, well, that's ridiculous. The end of America, they want the end of America. They tell you they want the end of America. They tell you that we want open borders. Open borders mean the end of sovereignty. That's what they mean. And forced health programs for the world mean the end of individual sovereignty. And if you can't own a car and you can't own land and you can't decide where you want to go, your sovereignty, your family, who feels free today to say what they think at work? No, you're a nurse, you can't speak up. You're a pharmacist, you can't speak up. You're a journalist, you can't speak up. You're an attorney, you can't speak up. Don't represent a January 6th, you might lose your law license. Rudy Giuliani told me the company he founded, the law firm he founded, when he agreed to take Trump on as his client, they fired him. So for a long time, this constitutional republic has not been functioning as a constitutional republic. And you already know that. But you probably have that question, what can I do about it? Well, we need laws to stop the onset of AI. But relying on the federal government to institute those laws is obviously a failed strategy. Okay, we all see that. And yet somehow we still are hoping. You really think this Department of Justice is going to indict anyone? Why did Justin Durham not recommend any indictments? Because they're not going to happen. He tried one with Michael Sussman, the attorney, and it failed. That doesn't mean there aren't indictments to come. If you look very carefully, that's why I said covert war sucks, right? Because it's not, there's no victories. There's no victory laps. There's nothing to make you feel good about yourself. But if you look carefully at the fine print, look at the trap that's being set. That's been laid for people. It is real. It really is real. It doesn't mean it's going to succeed. It has no chance if you don't play your part. It's so big. It's not 99% of the people on the planet know there are only two genders. I'm sorry. I mean, I've been to Mali. I can tell you, in Mali, they don't believe it. Botswana, Afghanistan, Syria, I mean, Taiwan. Please, come on. Okay, all right. So let's be certain. How many people actually are involved in this? How many people is it? Is it 1% of the global population? No. So what gets the rest of the population there is artificial intelligence. If you sit next to each other and you Google the exact, I hate that word, and you search online the exact same term, you will all get different answers. Because artificial intelligence today, as they assemble those data points about you, they're not just offering you commercials that is tailored to your needs. They're slowly narrowing your vision of the world. It's called, isolation is what it's called. We have geographic isolation since COVID. The airlines are not back to what they were. People are not traveling abroad as much. They're not traveling as far from home. I haven't seen my family since the beginning of COVID, my family in Africa. I haven't been to my father's grave. I watched him be buried on Zoom. No, that's not going to cut it. It's not going to cut it. I'm not doing that. Well, I still have the ability, because my brain is not connected to that global brain, not uploaded to the cloud. I still have that distance with my phone. So I still have the ability to say no. We're not going to have that ability for very long. They're working fast on this. And it is increasing. When the head of Google and Elon Musk and all these people come out and say, we got to do something about AI, I want to punch him in the face. That's the nice version of what I'd like to do for them, because they all know. They all know, and guess what? It's an arms race, globally, to see who can get there first. I asked someone who works on this, who's behind this? Who's really pushing us to this? Who's responsible? And he said it's an arms race. Every nation on earth of significance is fighting to win this one. Because when you do, it is the end. It's literally the end. So, some of the ways that you can combat this is forming strong local communities. But in order to utilize the laws available to you and the power that rests in counties and cities and states, it's really the only way out, because the federal government is not coming to save you. The federal government is obviously part of the problem. The Department of Justice and the FBI under this administration are not going to prosecute anyone. They're not going to prosecute Hunter Biden. They're not going to prosecute Joe Biden. And even when Trump was in power, when he declassified material, they told him, no, get nutted. We're not doing it. I mean, he fired people. They refused to leave the job. Right? When in history did that ever happen? So if you're counting on 2024 as your answer, you're going to get Trump back, and suddenly everything's going to be okay, why would it be different? Why would it be different? And what are the chances that you're even going to get Trump back? What are the chances he's not going to be in prison? I say slim to none. I mean, that's obviously what they did with the conviction in the Proud Boys case. Were you following that? I mean, they need, how are they creating a seditious conspiracy? Through convictions. I mean, there's no jury of your peers in Washington, D.C. You think one January 6th, you think they're all going to prison because they're guilty? No, they're not going to prison because they're guilty. They're going to prison because there's, I mean, they've got 100% Democrat juries and corrupt judges who ideologically agree with that. They're not applying the law. They're inventing laws to do this. And if you think, well, I'm okay because I didn't go to the Capitol on January 6th, you're sorely mistaken. Because once you're done with all the J6s, then it's all the Trump supporters. You know, and then it's the Moms for Liberty, and then it's the this, and then it's the that. And one by one, they're coming for every single one of us. And don't think they're just coming for conservatives. These are real distinctions, but they're manipulation, is what they really are. Because divided, we fall. That's the reality of it. If you're focused on how much you hate the Democrats and how much you can't stand these crazy leftists or whatever, it's over. If that's your focus and that's where your energy is going, it's over. Now, that may seem counterintuitive. I'm not saying you don't need to vote. I'm not saying you don't need to fight to put the right people in control of things. Obviously, you do at your school boards and at your, city council meetings and your local sheriffs and all of that. But it's still not happening. When you think about where we are, it's still not happening, is it? No. I mean, we just lost in Fredericksburg, the school board elections. The conservative candidate lost. And the rhinos and the Democrats banded together and they won. They're two sides of the same coin. That's what they really are. And these divisions are used to blind us to this far greater threat that is a war against humanity. And part of that, sadly, is hedonism. Babylon, Sodom and Gomorrah, is people far more you're all well versed in what I'm talking about. That's what it means when you see 6-year-olds, being forced to do these things in the classroom and being filmed and nobody doing anything about it. I know a lot of you probably look at stuff online and you have an acute sense of what trafficking means. But I want to read you something that is very painful. In fact, Joy, I don't think you want to hear this. And if there is any other little ones in the room, you don't want to hear this. I'm telling you about this because human trafficking is a nice way of saying, we put a name and a label on it. I told you words matter. But we leave out of that conversation organ harvesting. That's a very real thing. I mean, Nigerians on their way, Christians fleeing the genocide of Christians in Nigeria, going through Libya. Oh my gosh, you can look on Facebook. I mean, it's ripped apart. It's happening all over. But so is human farming. And our social services, our family courts, our CPS, all of these institutions, just like we looked, to the FBI to enforce the law, we looked to DOJ, right, to do a similar thing. Our institutions for children are involved in trafficking at an epic scale. That doesn't mean there aren't good people there trying to do the right thing. I know, because I'm working on a case right now. And these people are violent and evil, and they go after anyone who tries to stop them. So anyone within the CPS system trying to stop them, they get eaten alive. And it is very, very dangerous. But this case that I'm working on involves a young woman in Texas who was raped and abused by her foster father. Over and over and over again, CPS put her back in his care. In her 30s, she finally made it away from him long enough to get into UT and to try to better her education. And you will understand why when you hear the letter I'm going to read to you. I wondered how she could get away from him at that point, but he followed her to campus. And people on campus, students, described that when he came near her, she started peeing herself. And I mention that because you'll understand when I read this letter. She was 9 when this letter was written by a teacher at her school. And this letter was written on January 31st, 2001. This woman's foster father was a Houston police officer at the time. He's now retired. He has security guards. He's trafficked, I don't know how many countless children over the years, many of them his own. His foster daughter, Brianna, has had 17 children by him. And I really like it when I tell people that and they say, well, how old was she? It's not even possible to have 17 children in that. And it's like, you really are asking the wrong questions if that's where your focus is. Because at age 11, according to the CPS documents I have, she had triplets. Okay? And I want to read this to you because I gotta warn you though, if you have a soft stomach and you don't want to hear this, you should leave. Because I was sick after I read this. But I feel that if you really want to understand the evil that we're facing, this is what it looks like. And it's all around us in these institutions. And if you're relying on these institutions, you're lost. So, to whom it may concern, I'm a 5th grade math teacher here at John G. Osborne. I've worked here for over 15 years as a math teacher, coordinated many field trips, activities for families that choose to embark their children's educational journey here. I've become very familiar with Brianna and her family since she was walking the halls downstairs in our kindergarten wing. When I first noticed Brianna, she was a smart, funny, charismatic, and beautiful little girl in Mrs. C's kindergarten class. She had a wit about her and a vocabulary out of this world. Brianna could read at a very advanced level at just 5 years old. I immediately became drawn to her enthusiasm and vocabulary, so much so that I would grab her tiny hand and have her read to some of the classes during recess. She enjoyed it. I would have to say that I too enjoyed her company. She had become the granddaughter I never had, and I took her under my wing. Taking her under my wing meant I had much contact with Brianna throughout the years. I have noticed a great change in her appearance and demeanor, and I can tell you where my concerns began. In 1998, September, Brianna was headed down the hallway, very tiny but excited to do her show and tell project. Mrs. Francis kept telling Brianna to be still because she couldn't stop moving. She was skipping so much in the hallway, and normally Brianna is the line leader and hall monitor, but that day it was something different. During my lunch, all of the teachers were gathered in the break room, and my co-worker Pamela Smith came in frightened and in tears. She stated that during her show and tell teaching today, Brianna was covered in purple bruises, and stated, "Today I'm going to turn purple, like Barney." Pamela stated that the bruises were raised and bleeding. She said Brianna could barely sit down. She could tell that her bottom hurt when trying to sit still. Pamela reported this to the nurse. Nurse Diaz did absolutely nothing. That's not by accident. It's part of the system. Instead, she called Brianna's father, who I am not fond of, and from what was reported to me, he came in his police uniform and dragged Brianna out of the office. Pamela said that Brianna even wet herself, and when crying, her father told her to shut the F up. As a father, I would never talk to my children in that manner, let alone beat them to the point they are covered in purple bruises and blisters. I recall Brianna being out of school for 2 weeks. I can tell you in the 2 weeks we were all worried, but as instructors it became a fine line between our instructional obligation and what we would do as parents. 1998 October, Brianna returned to school quiet, not her usual chipper self, but we all still maintained professionalism. And Brianna got right back in the swing of things with learning. It is as though she redirected her pain and discomfort to the books. Throughout the next few years, I noticed Brianna excelling in giving speeches and every week she would get a Friday Owl green ribbon. She was the top student in the school, and her peers loved her. Brianna helped all her classmates, whether it was cleaning up after lunch or passing pencils and erasers to them from her sticker-filled crayon box. All our students really looked at Brianna as a leader, in spite of the many days that Brianna would come to school bruised, with black eyes and visible marks on her neck. I will never forget. And I will never forget when Brianna began her monthly. At this point is when I became concerned that someone, most importantly her police officer father, was harming her sexually. I said police officer because he flaunted his badge and buddies at every turn in the school. We all grew numb to his angry demeanor and realized that reporting what we saw fell on deaf ears. Back to why I believe he was harming Brianna sexually. During PE, Coach Powell reported Brianna could not change into PE attire because at 8 years old, she would bleed very heavily. In one instance, Brianna had blood running down her leg. I finally asked Brianna, was someone hurting her? And she cried in my arms for well over an hour, but never confirmed it. My shirt was soaked with tears. In that instant, as a father, I wanted to take Brianna home because I could see that Mrs. Balcom, her mother, was not going to do anything. And instead of protecting her baby girl, she was trying to say that Brianna was having behavior issues, even tried to seek a mental health diagnosis from our PTA coordinator. She paraded around the fact that Brianna was adopted and caring for her was very difficult. Others and I could see past the lie. Mrs. Balcom was completely full of it, and it was gut-wrenching to say the least. However, because of Mr. Balcom's Houston connections out here in Acres Homes, no one helped. Which brings me to today. I am fed up, disappointed in reaching out to mayors, city council, and by God, whoever will listen. Today, this 9-year-old beautiful baby girl is pregnant. I am not the only one who noticed this. This baby girl has had her hair shaved completely bald, and it's cold outside. She comes to school with no hat or gloves, but a big, huge jacket that she wears all day. I finally had to take Brianna to the bathroom with Patricia Blackburn, the head of our Child Development Hall, and we saw it. Underneath her jacket and several sweatshirts with holes and dried blood was a pregnant belly. Brianna was very scared to show us, and even wet herself. I had to keep telling Brianna that everything would be okay. Her belly had many marks and bruises on it, as if someone was beating her. Patrice asked Brianna to turn around, and she could barely bend over. Her back had blisters that no child should ever succumb to. I tried to call for help, and the police sent her father. This is a problem. When does someone listen? A 9-year-old baby girl is visibly pregnant, and not one person is taking the time to investigate these people. Brianna needs to be helped, and the baby she is pregnant with, my heart is broken knowing I could not save her sooner than today. It's a damn shame this is happening. In 15 years, I've never seen anything like this. Where are the people who help our children? And that is the same question I have for you today. Where are the people who help our children? Our children are being indoctrinated on YouTube. Every minute they spend on their phones, they're being manipulated by artificial intelligence. They're being encouraged to indulge every hedonistic feeling they have. They're being taught advanced sexual things that have no place in their lives. They're being groomed for pedophiles. I mean, they're tearing down everything that is noble and good. Someone shoot that person. Sorry. There you go. Somebody say that again. Oh, you got Alexa? Kill it. You have Google in your Nest in your home? Get rid of it. Start to separate yourself from the machines as much as you can and build local structures around you that begin with knowledge. How many of us know really what our rights are at a polling station? How many of us know really what power the state has? How many of us know that the federal government cannot just come into the state of Texas and cart you away unless the state allows it? They have set precedent that is in violation of the Constitution. In 2014 and 15, Governor Abbott went to the Texas legislature. He got millions of dollars to close the border. Why not today? Why not now? Why? If you think the border problem is going away and somebody's going to do something, then you don't understand that what is being implemented is the global policy on migration and the forced diversification of this country with an end goal of removing nations. Because, you know, when you talk about putting laws on AI, what people will often say is it's a violation of the First Amendment. And what we have forgotten is that the Constitution of the United States protects American citizens. It doesn't apply to the world. It doesn't actually apply to the world. So someone in Pakistan doesn't have the right to launch a psychological weapon at the US. And if we don't create the laws to protect this country from those weapons, it's over. There is no country. So when you're trying to figure out what is it that I need to do, you need to read General Flynn's book on 5th generation warfare, A Citizen's Guide to 5th generation warfare. You need to look at what 6th and 7th generation warfare really are. You need to stop paying attention to artificial intelligence. Because when it tells you what to buy, or it tells you, offers you, you have a conversation about this and it pops up on your phone, that is artificial intelligence. It's not a human being monitoring every phone. These are not phones, okay? Let's stop calling them the words that they give us and call them what they really are. They really are surveillance devices. And if the federal government showed up at your door and said, I want to buy every room in your house, you would say, no, thank you. But instead, you put Alexa in every room in your house. You do it for them. And what did they do when they created all of this? They created another system to finance their ideology and their goals. And they've made trillions out of technology, haven't they? So they have technology as a source of financing. They've created activism as a full-time career. So you'll often hear from people, I've got a small business to run, I've got a family, I've got a this, I've got a that. You know, I can't make it to that school board meeting. I do it. I mean, I'm just struggling to keep my head above water every single day. Because nobody's going to hire me as a journalist. I want to go to, you know, I'm not going to work at Newsmax. You see their coverage on the Ukraine war, you nuts? And what did they do on January 6th? Nothing. I'm not working for these people because it's just a matter of time. Just a matter of time before they show who they really are. Look what Fox is doing right now. Laura Ingram's gone. They're bringing Jesse Waters and who else? Greg Gutfeld. They're moving them up in the time slot because they're trying to paper over the cracks and convince you that it's not what it really is, which you can all see. It's over. It's over. Fox is over. It literally just exists now. It's there to control you. They need mechanisms of control and manipulation. That's all these things are. Stop expecting the media to do something because it's another system of control and manipulation. Stop expecting the Supreme Court to act. Stop expecting the Department of Justice to do its job. It's not going to happen until there is a significant change. And that change really begins when the states stand up. Not one governor has come out and said that Trump won the 2020 election. Not one. Ron DeSantis? No. But look at what Ron DeSantis is doing. Look at what he's doing. I don't mean the arguments between Trump and DeSantis. I think that's all theater. I really do think that's all theater. I would not be surprised if the next president was not Donald Trump, because they're going to, well, for reasons I can't really talk about, because I can't substantiate them completely. So I'm not going to do that. But if I were you, I'd be watching General Michael Flynn very closely. And it was not an accident when Trump said to him at that rally in Florida, "Get ready, Mike, a year and a half." They're all working together, but you don't win a war like this by playing all your cards openly on the table. That's not how this happens, because all of our systems have been infiltrated, right? And so if I knew all the answers, and if I knew exactly what was happening everywhere, we would have no chance. Because it would mean that if I know it, they know it. And then you've got no advantage. So look for the signs, right? Isn't it odd that Durham's report came out all this time, all these years later? Something doesn't add up. When you have that feeling that something doesn't add up, that's an indicator. That should tell you something. When you see what's happening, we haven't had a false flag event yet. That's a miracle, isn't it? And it's happened because there are people working diligently, legally, within the Constitution. There are people doing things, but they're not white knights. They're going to ride in and fix it all. That's not how it works. This is too big. So if you can't protect the nation from artificial intelligence, you can protect your city. Who knows what 391 commissions are in the state of Texas? 391 commission laws. Does anybody here know what they are? Okay, that is what I'm talking about. Under Texas law, any county can form a 391 commission, and if you have a majority vote, the state is required to act on what it is the county commission voted for. So in Uvalde, a few months before the shooting, they had a 391 commission, and they voted on $3 million for different things in the city, and the state of Texas had to give them the $3 million. So county by county, with 391 commissions, you can keep pornography out of the schools, you can close the border, you can do all of these things. Start small. Start with what you can effect. Whatever it is you're good at is what you're going to need. And if you think you can do it on your own, it's not going to happen. The basic things you need for survival: communications. Well, how many batteries do you have? How much power do you have to keep your communication systems going? How many ham radios? How many people know how to operate a ham radio? Well, you can go buy one. You know what to do with it? Do you know anyone else's frequencies? I mean, it's better to have it than not, but you know what I mean? Okay, so communications, medicine, food, water, clothing, and everything else, right? How long does that sustain you? It doesn't sustain you for very long, especially when you think about people showing up at your door to take everything that you have. You live in a city? Forget about it. You gotta get out. You gotta get out, and you gotta have somewhere to go. And how are you gonna get there? How are you gonna get there? Because the roads will be the most dangerous place there is in that situation. Do you have a map? Who has a map? You can't stop at the 7-Eleven and buy one. It's not gonna happen. How many places even sell maps today? Very few. Yeah, if your phone's not working, so get a railway map. Because if you follow the railway tracks, you'll never be lost. They'll always take you to somewhere. But none of us, we're not G.I. Joe. I mean, let's face it, we're not. Geez, my husband, what he bought for our emergency food supply, 400 cans of green beans. Nobody in our family even eats green beans. I'm like, they couldn't have got ramen, they live on ramen. You know? Seriously, look at it. These are not real solutions. Every time they sit down at my dining room table and say, "Oh, I'm in Texas, they're out taking my guns," I'm like, you guys all talk. You've been saying this for how many years? Nobody wants to go to that as a solution. You all know that's not a solution. It is a miracle that we haven't had a real false flag event. And it's because people are working very diligently behind the scenes to make sure those things don't happen. And what is happening, if you're paying, you wouldn't notice these things, but just recently, the federal government declassified one of our most classified units, Task Force Orange, TFO. And that was quickly removed from the internet. They're outing the people that they know can stop them. They're outing them as they hunt them down. And they're countering with that. So sometimes what you don't see and what isn't happening is an indication that we're winning. Because we would be in a nuclear winter by now if people weren't working diligently behind the scenes. That's the reality. You can see that's where they want us to go. Just look at what they're doing with the dollar. The BRICS nations, you're all following BRICS? Right? Brazil, Russia, China, India, South Africa. Okay, so how can they keep raising that interest rate? Oh yeah, that's great for the dollar. No, it's not. So do you hear Biden talking about BRICS? They don't care because they're going to a global central bank digital currency. They know that the central bank digital currency is going to fail. They know it's not a solution, all the things that are being pointed out. They don't care because it's not going to be money that gets you access to goods and services in society. It's going to be something you don't control. It'll be controlled by artificial intelligence. And when you scan that chip with those liquid nanoparticles, it goes green or it goes red. That's what they're doing in China today. You want to get on a train? Scan your phone. Does your phone go red or green? And there's nobody to give you an answer. Nobody says why. There isn't an appeal board you can go to that tells you, oh, I'm sorry, that was a mistake. Oh, okay, yes. If you just work on having too many baths, using too much water. If you just go to showers, maybe in 3 days you can go to work. No, you go every day and you scan it and you hope. And there's nobody paying you when you don't go to work. That's already happening. In South Africa, where my family live, my sister has a Discovery Health credit card. Discovery also does her health insurance. Well, she got a letter from Discovery recently admonishing her for buying too much sugar in her groceries. Yeah, because they take what she shops at, pays with on her card, it gets sent to Discovery Health. They have artificial intelligence analyze it, didn't have to hire any more people, and they tell you, oh, there's too much sugar content in your grocery bill. And if you don't want your health insurance going up, you have to reduce your sugar intake. And of course, if you're good, we'll reduce your insurance, right? If you're a good girl and you buy what we tell you to buy, your insurance will cost you less. And people are doing that, right? Because I want to save money. That's a good idea. Actually, in South Africa, what they're also doing is buying a separate credit card and buying all the crap they want to eat on that card, but getting points off on their Discovery Health. That's only going to work for so long, people. That's not a real solution. I'm okay, Jack. I can still get my popcorn and my fruit juice and my chocolate. I've beaten the system. No, you haven't, because there's a bigger game afoot. For your car insurance, if you agree to put a monitor in your car, they tell it what speed you go, how often you brake, how fast you brake, do you brake, do you ride up on objects a lot? And if you're a good driver and you meet certain parameters, they'll take you earn points and you get money off your car insurance. It's already happening. Your privacy, your freedom, everything, your free will, everything God gave us. Everything God gave us is what they want. When you read articles, how many of you have read articles that say that young blood is the solution to staying youthful, right? And to looking youthful. You've read it. It's all over the media. USA Today, Politico, NBC, you can find it. Did anybody ask, how much blood do you need? How much young blood do you need? Where do you get it from? By the way, how do you get it? How does it extract it? And does it make a difference the younger and younger you go? Like, is a baby's blood better? Is a baby's blood better than a teen or a toddler? How much blood does a baby have to give to keep Nancy Pelosi looking that way? Hard to believe. I know. But the point is, they've already told you what they want from you. They need your organs. Because when your brain is connected to the Internet of Things and you become transhuman, your organs don't keep up. That's why they're working on bionic limbs and things like that. They need your blood. They need your labor. So that's what the Internet of Things really means. Yuval Noah Harari, the Israeli professor who wrote Sapiens and Homo Deus, science advisor to Bill Gates, he said that when artificial intelligence replaces most jobs in the world, we will become useless eaters. Your life will have no meaning. Your life will have no purpose. You basically are worthless. So why should we share, he didn't say this part, this is the unsaid part, why should we share the resources of the planet if you contribute nothing to society? We, he says, are on the verge of acquiring divine power. Very interesting, because he also says that the Bible and God and religion is fake news. It's not real. Oh, so what does divine power mean then? Well, in a world where there are gods, there are never a lot of gods. So that means your money ain't gonna help you. Your food supplies, all that stuff that you think that you're building in order to survive the apocalypse, it's not gonna help you. Because there's a much more sinister agenda. We can't win this fight on our own. It's obvious to all of us, it's a spiritual battle. But at the same time, we have to stop it. If we don't stop it, literally, this is the end of humanity. I don't want you to be, to leave here feeling hopeless. Oops, too late. Sorry, no. But then again, we're screwed, no. We're not there yet. We're not there yet. Yes, God does win. God does win, but what does that look like? What does that look like, and how many of us survive? I told my son, you better get right with God, because I don't want to be on the ark and see you on the shore and have to wave goodbye that way. It's not going down like that, okay? But the Bible does say we have a responsibility as parents to make sure our children know God. How many of our children really know God? Not many, let's be honest. Even mine, I've done a poor job. And I don't mean, I'm not lecturing. I'm not telling people what to do. I'm just telling people this is the reality that we face. If you didn't see Barack Obama's last birthday party, I mean, they're on the rise. They're increasingly obvious about the relationship and the worship of Satan. It's everywhere. It's literally everywhere. And yet we're still coy about mentioning, about praying in public and talking about God. And oh goodness, don't want to be written off as one of those crazy God people, right? Crazy Christian, right? And until we go back to a relationship with God where we understand it's not a one-way street. We don't just ask for things. We're meant to do God's work. I really, these things come through me. They don't really come from me. God shows me things. And they're not visions. I just know. I know. I meet someone and I know, oh, you've been sad for a very long time. You thought that you would never find anyone again. But you're not alone, actually. And this is why. I see these things. People I don't even know. And they've never said to me, that's not true. So what I can tell you is, this is a room of people who have the ability to change this. That's why you travel this distance. Not really to hear from me, but to hear from what's passed through me. I do my best work when I tell other people's stories. That's what I was born for. So this is, in a way, the story of humanity. And there's not going to be someone that looks back and says, why didn't they do something about it? Because there's not going to be humanity. It's an incredible thought. It is literally an incredible thought. But this is a war on literally what you see before you. They teach us, look what they've done with superheroes. They've conditioned us to believe that something out there is greater than our human frailty. That the ability to give your life to save someone else's is not the greatest thing on earth. They can't program a driverless car to sacrifice itself to save someone else. That's not programmable. That's a human thing. They can't program humor. Our ability to laugh and our ability to see through things, those are human gifts. Our ability to die is a gift. We've been taught to fear it. And yes, I fear anything happening to my children, and I've suffered. I've lost my mother and my father, and I still live with that pain. But I now understand no one wants to live forever. Only the psychotic people, literally, the psychotic people that are doing this to us, that are leading us like lambs to the slaughter. That's where we're going. Rather than focusing on the latest crazy person on TikTok, and there are a lot of them, you need to focus on the real threat and on uniting. Finding a way, because when I travel the length and breadth of this country, it doesn't matter who I encounter, we are not divided. Those divisions are artificial. They're created and manipulated. They really are. So, what I want to say, I don't know if I have time to take questions, and I'm happy to take questions.
You do have time to take questions.
Okay, so what I want to say to you though is, they taught us that superheroes were better than humanity. They wanted us, we revere superheroes. We revere people that are greater than us in some way. I mean, honestly, if aliens were that smart, they'd have taken Earth a long time ago. Not happening. That's another cover story. That technology is human-made. And if you really think about it, you know, when Concorde came into existence, that was already 20 years old. And then it was there for a very brief time, and then it was gone. Maybe they didn't want us to have supersonic technology in our hands, right? Because it needs to be in the hands of the few. I learned this when I was you saw that clip with Jane Goodall, but I learned something very important on that trip with Jane Goodall. I wanted to bathe in the river. We were in Lake Tanganyika in Tanzania, in the forest where she lived with the chimpanzees. And I said, gosh, I would love to bath in the lake. And she said, well, why don't you? And I said, well, because I can't wash my hair and, you know, all that stuff, because I was thinking soap and, you know, and that in the river is not good for it, right? She said, oh, that won't make any difference. It won't make any difference at all. Just bathe in the lake, you'll love it. And she said, it only matters if they all bathe in the lake. We're the problem. The lake is for them. It's for the few. It's not for all of us. The world is not for all of us. If you believe that we're about to run out of food, again, you're an idiot. Sorry. There's no sign that the planet is running out of food. It's not true. What's the existential climate crisis? So let me ask you, how long do we have? Oh, you don't know. No, you don't know. Because they've never even bothered to define it, and every single climate model that they built to create this false narrative in the war of narratives, that's generational warfare, has failed. None of it is true, but we don't even ask them to explain it anymore. So, our greatest gift as human beings is our human frailty. It's our ability to fail and get back up. It's not what superheroes do, right? They don't fail. They win every time. That's not reality. And so instead of fearing that, if you fear what could happen to you, if you fear what could happen to your business, if you fear what could happen to your family, You've already lost. If you stop watching the news, you took yourself off the battlefield. You don't win when you're not in the fight. You can't win when you're not in the fight. So I know it's hard, but you have to stay engaged. And you can do it in your way. Engage with the thing that you can deal with. Make that what you do. If you're retired and you're good at building businesses, help someone else build their business. You know, Condemned USA, Travis Evans, here's a guy, I was just at his house. It's falling apart because every cent he has, he's getting attorneys for other January 6th defendants. He's helped around 400. How many have you helped? And these are people who, when it stood up for you, you all know the election was stolen. And they were framed. That's what happened on January 6th. They were framed by undercover operatives, undercover law enforcement. Yes, Antifa was there, but they weren't the only ones. Foreign mercenaries, I'm working on that, fleshing that out. Right now, they were framed and set up. And did people get upset? Did they, the Capitol Police, an officer, Lila Morris, beat Roseanne Boylan to death. Do you know who Roseanne Boylan is? Right, so I don't know how many of you know her story. But everybody knows Ashley Babbitt. People don't know Roseanne Boylan's name. She came from Georgia. They said she died of a drug overdose, and they said she was trampled. She was beaten to death, and she's lying there unconscious and unarmed and being beaten over and over and over again. This woman is in a frenzy of hate and rage, this officer. And the next year at the Super Bowl, they just pulled her out onto the field and honored her for her brave service at the Capitol on January 6th. Yeah, and you know what they did to Roseanne Boylan? They cremated her. Family got ashes. Their daughter went to the Capitol, and they got ashes back. And Luke Coffey, to go back to the beginning, Luke Coffey stood next to Roseanne Boylan while she was dying. He heard her cries from underneath the pile of bodies after the Capitol Police pushed all these people off the stairs onto top of each other. He heard her screaming for help. And he went up there. And he reached down. He was trying to stop people. There's footage of him, and photographs of him, saying stop and pray. He was trying to get people to pray with him. He believes God brought him to those steps that day. And at one point, as the police were pushing him over, he picked up a crutch and tried to hold it above the crowd so that they would stop beating people. And for that, he's facing 20 years in prison for assault with a deadly weapon. When you read in the papers, you hear about January 6th defendants and you think, oh, they shouldn't have done that. And they were very violent. Let me tell you, that tunnel where all that violence happened, they were walking through there for hours before they decided to seal that tunnel and push people out. And they had agitators and operatives on the ground who were pushing the crowd from the other side. They crushed them in that tunnel, and then they pushed them over the stairs. They hoped that they would topple to their deaths. And Roseanne Boylan did, and some others nearly died too. And everyone who was in that position who tried to save Roseanne Boylan, almost every single one of them has been behind bars without a trial for more than 2 years. They don't want that story on the record. They don't want people to know that Ronald Maccabee battled to save her life. They don't want people to know and see that there were people in the crowd doing CPR on a woman who was beaten unconscious by a Capitol Police officer. So Luke Coffey has lost everything. He's Texas royalty over there. Luke, I'm going to mess it up, but I know you got that famous football person in your family. Daryl K. something. How many kids? His grandfather was chairman of the DNC in Texas. And people don't want to associate with him in Dallas because he's an insurrectionist and a domestic terrorist. So if you lose your friends, you lose your family, you lose your business, you lose your home. Veterans have lost their benefits that they charged with seditions, conspiracy. Applied retroactively, by the way, to the beginning of the year. So that means if your home loan was paid, if you had a home loan, you now owe the VA for your home loan. You owe the VA for your medical care. You owe the VA for your student loans. They've lost breadwinners. I mean, for 2 years they weren't allowed to see family, no family visits. And if you wanted to meet with your attorney, because of COVID restrictions, you had to agree to spend 2 weeks in solitary confinement for one visit, 1 hour with your attorney. Sheriff McAbee has spent most of his over 2 years in prison in solitary confinement, the most extreme form of punishment. So when you come to me and say, what can I do? There's no shortage of things for you to do. You know, there's a lot of different organizations. Victoria White is another woman who was beaten senseless on the stairs. Sarah McAbee, McAbee's wife, is out there fighting for him. She has a small organization, Travis Evans Condemned USA. He's fighting for change of venue. He's applying attorneys. We now know from the Proud Boys trial that the Capitol Police had 25 undercover officers that they've admitted to on the ground that day because of Travis Evans and Condemned USA. He's flying right now to DC to go and testify in another trial at his own expense. I interviewed his son yesterday and I said, what's been the hardest part of this? Because he was held up at gunpoint by the FBI, even though his attorney had said Travis would turn himself in, and they descended on his home and raided it. Imagine your son having multiple guns pointed at his head, 14 years old. And I said, what is the hardest part? And he said, I don't have a dad anymore. Because my dad spends all of his time on this, helping people. People are being evicted from their homes because the breadwinner's gone behind bars. Political prisoners detained without trial, denied their habeas corpus rights. I mean, I could go on and on and on. So start right there. Start right there with the Constitution and with the law, and help the people who are trying to fight it. There's more than enough for you to do. Start in your schools. I mean, do you know what DEI is? The new version of CRT? Yeah. And my children have been kicked out of school, and it's because the principal hates me. They set a criminal investigation for a terrorist threat on my son. Because at the lunch table at school, my best friend and assistant, April Laird, son was at the table, and a woman walked into the cafeteria. It was just after Nashville, and she had her hands in her pockets, and he thought, where's she going? And who is this woman? And he said, oh boy, I hope this doesn't turn into another Nashville. There was a whole conversation with a whole bunch of boys at the table. My son wasn't even really involved. At one point he said, you know, oh, Uvalde. And for that, and a bunch of other parents that made reports that April's son had threatened to shoot up the school. That is a criminal investigation of a terror threat. It goes to the Joint Terrorism Task Force. It goes to the Department of Homeland Security. It goes to the Attorney General of the state of Texas. That's what they did. And even though the police found it was unfounded and baseless, they still kicked us out, including my daughter who wasn't even there. Because they don't want you to speak up, do they? They don't want you to speak up. And every day that you bow to them, who's got the money to sue them? I mean, if you're an attorney and you're retired, that's one thing that you can do. People need legal help. A lot of people need legal help. We're establishing the Press Club USA, and one of the things we're going to provide is legal advice to journalists, because a lot of journalists are being sued. That's the new tactic, right? The Dominion lawsuit that Fox settled. Yeah, they don't want you looking. They don't want to go into a courtroom. They don't want to play that narrative out in a courtroom. I mean, they said no to all those cases. You think they're going to let that lawsuit go into court? No. And how much does Fox not want it either? They don't want it either, because they called Arizona with less than 10% of the vote counted. So the deception operation was vested in Fox and in all the people on the right believing it. That's what it was vested in. So those seeing things for what they are, speaking up, and learning the law, finding the solution is at the state level. That's where everything can be stopped. And once you do that, if enough states do it, you can win. But ultimately, you have the most powerful weapons on your side. Because you have the truth and you have God. Thank you. I can take questions. If anybody wants to leave, I won't be offended. But I will sit down.
If anybody has a question, if you'll raise your hand, we will bring you a mic so that everybody can hear your question. Yes.
So I'm not sure this is a question. I'm not sure this is working either. Can you hear me?
You're not sure it's a question. That's a very simple thing.
So I'm an operation officer for Texas Military Department. We, like you said, we're on the border. We have 5,000 troops, and these soldiers are seeing people drowning, getting their throat cuts. They're seeing rape trees, and it's just they're running brushes, and they're catching like 25 terrorists a year on the terrorist list, and migrants from 165 different countries. So I think we have kind of an issue here. And these are citizen soldiers, 5,000 of them on the border. So that's not really a question, it's a statement, but we have issues.
So when you say 5,000, are you talking about the National Guard troops, or are you talking about
National
citizens?
Guard, 5,000 National Guard
Right.
troops.
So this is really important to understand. Is
Texas National Guard.
Yes. All those troops are doing is migrant care. In fact, they're a migrant transportation system. That's all they're doing. They take the people and they transport them to Border Patrol. And then Border Patrol's job...
That's a problem.
Yeah, because we don't have a national security policy on the southern border because they don't believe in nations or security. So what they're doing is implementing the migration policy of the UN, which recognizes migration as a human right. So if you remember, when Biden first came to office, what was one of the first things that the Biden administration did? They removed the word illegal from the language of the federal government and Border Patrol and so on and so on. So you were no longer allowed to say illegal, illegal immigrants. You would now have to say migrants. And that's not a mistake. It's literally word for word the UN policy. It's the Global Compact on Migration, where they recognize migration now as a human right, sovereign borders, sovereign states. None of those rights are now subservient to the human rights. And what do we know? This is a country founded on the rights, our God-given rights. So what they're saying is they're putting humans above God. That's literally what they're doing. And so now all we have, by the way, from the Republicans and the Democrats, is policies on migrant care. What does the GOP say? Well, we need more processing centers, and we need to do this, and we need more of this, and we need more Border Patrol agents. Why? So you can manage more people. No, that's a migration policy that now recognizes that sovereignty and American citizenship are meaningless. They mean absolutely nothing. And I will tell you so.
So I'm tracking, but these soldiers, National Guardsmen, are seeing horrible things.
Yeah, sure.
And they're having to deal with this.
Well, the rape trees, I'll tell you, I've investigated the rape trees, and I've never, ever really been able to substantiate it. And I know that there are people who say that there are, and I've seen the pictures, and I've been to folk furries, and I've been to the ranches, and I've been to the areas where the pictures were taken. And, is there rape happening all along the way? 100%. In fact, so much so that the UN and the International Office of Migration hand out rape kits with condoms and next day abortion pills and all kinds of things to migrants along the way. But we know, in fact, journalists have been to Honduras and El Salvador and places and interviewed families and talked to them about what do they give their children for the journey, and the parents tell them,
They give them contraceptives because they know their children are going to be raped along the way. They don't. So, but what is happening is, for example, for a long time, the cartels have been in operational control of the southern border. So, what does that mean? It means they decide who crosses, how many cross, where they cross, and you notice you haven't been hearing about a lot of drownings. Why not? Well, because look at El Paso. There's thousands and thousands of people coming across in El Paso. Why? Because there's no river in El Paso. It's a trickle. You just step right over it. I know because when people were drowning in the river and I was down there covering it, I'd go to El Paso and I'd be like, why would you drown in the river when you just cross in El Paso? Well, it's because the cartels know that Joe Biden doesn't need the political headache of bodies flowing in the Rio Grande, do they? They needed that headache for Trump, but they don't want that headache for Joe Biden because the cartels and the administration obviously have a deal. Obviously they're working together. They both have the outcome they want. So you're spreading, you know, a very good friend of mine, Jason Jones, I'm sure some of you know his work. Jason, a former captain in the Texas Department of Public Safety, former head of counterterrorism, ran the Cross-Border Operations Center in 2014 and 15. I mean, knows the stuff like the back of his hand, has tracked the cartels for 20-something years. And Jason said he just went up to give a congressional briefing. He was asked to go by the TAP, the American Project, yeah. And these congressmen asked him, so they read it, they saw it had a DEA map from like 10 years ago. And they were like, well, we understand that there's cartels in our city. Is that true? And Jason was like, he said to me, I could not believe it. And he said, sir, not only is there cartel in your city, there's every cartel is in your city. And they're in every city, and every town, and every county, and every district in the United States of America. And how you don't know that at this point is beyond me. I mean, several years ago, DEA did Operation Python. They arrested, this was an operation against Cartel Jalisco Nueva Generacion, CJNG. It's a new cartel, ultra violent, even by their standards, with none of the old kind of, you know, Sinaloa has loyalty to its local communities and so on. No, Cartel Jalisco Nueva Generacion started overseas. It's a Mexican cartel that started in Australia, New Zealand, and abroad. And when they were really rich and powerful and had everything they needed to take on the other cartels, then they operated in Mexico. They were very strategic about what they did. Well, DEA arrested over 700 members of CJNG in the United States. They seized billions of dollars in revenue. And you know what it did to their operations? Zero. A multi-year operation. Law enforcement as a solution to the cartels is a failed model. It is a failed model. People say follow the money. It takes years to build a RICO case against the cartels and follow that money. Please, the cartels move at lightning speed. They build submarines to move a load of drugs and trash them. They have more money than they know what to do with. They build walls in their apartments made out of stacks of cash and plaster over it. Because they don't know what else to do with the money. They've got that much money. Cash, yes, and not only that, they have more than that. Because now humans are just as valuable to them, sometimes more, than narcotics. They used to keep those lines separate. They didn't want to mess up your narcotics rat lines by pushing people down there. Well now, people are the gift that never stops giving. Because when you traffic a young girl, I mean, they're raped on average 15 times a day, 7 days a week, every day of the year. If you're sick, not sick, there's no sick days in this. And they do it to young boys, and they do it to children of all ages. I mean, the internet has given birth to the darkest forces among us. I mean, you might have had, you know, people here and there that did terrible things, but with technology, they have found each other. They have communities. They have created new genres of pornography, for example, called hurtcore. Hurtcore is sadistic porn. Earmuffs, Joy. I spoke to a content moderator at Facebook. He told me, I said, what are some of the things that you see? Like, tell me, even off camera. He's like, oh, there's people that they like to take a bag of puppies that have just been born. And then, a girl with stilettos will stomp the puppies until they're all dead and bleeding and squealing, and this is sexually arousing for people. This is the kind of thing that they do. This is the kind of thing there's one guy who was arrested when I was investigating years ago. He was arrested for buying 400 live child rapes from across the internet. Everything every bad thing that humanity is able to do individually, the internet has multiplied. That's why elections are now stolen. There's lots of fraud that happens before you get to the machines. But the machines enable fraud at scale and from a distance, right? Because it can be manipulated from a distance. That's why if you have trouble believing, if you really fall for the lie that there wasn't significant enough fraud to alter the results and all the rest of it, I mean, you're in la land at this point. I can tell you when I investigated it, I found no part of the election system that wasn't fraudulent. From the voting rolls, all the way along, from the census. What do you think the census is doing? I mean, you really think California deserves all those congressional representatives so much more than Texas? It's the most chance in hell. So they use every single device they have. And the reality is, you take that ballot, and what do? You go put it in a machine. And it spits out what on the other side? A QR code. How many people here speak QR code? Oh, that's right, none. Yeah, we don't speak the language. We don't speak the language of the machines. Yes, programmers write code. But even that code is understood and read by the coder. Not even another coder can maybe figure it out, depending on what they have access to, but it's not a given. So we have no idea what those programs say and do, and neither does a single election official in the United States of America, not one of them. You think when Dominion comes to do their update, that they know what they're doing on the machine? Give me a break. Give me a break. We have literally outsourced one of the single most important functions for this republic to survive to machines and the assholes who run them. That's what we've done. And then we argue about whether or not the election is free and fair. Seriously, think about what you've done. You have no idea what that QR code says. And by the way, when you sit down in a restaurant and you scan the QR code, you don't know what you just downloaded. You could have downloaded the CCP's favorite surveillance app. You could have downloaded child pornography that's just waiting there, and that should they decide you become a problem at some point, they know from your patent, no, she was at that restaurant. Did she download the app? Oh yeah, she's got some child porn on her phone. These are not hard to do. And with artificial intelligence, it can all be run externally. You don't even need to worry about it, but never forget that artificial intelligence today is created by human beings. We put the inputs in, right? ChatGPT and all that stuff, human beings put those inputs in. And they're choosing to put those inputs in and what they're doing. They're making conscious choices, and their choices don't overpower yours. So what you see happening at the southern border, they can lie and tell you they've sent more troops and and this and that. More Border Patrol agents are committing suicide today than ever in the history of the Border Patrol. The aerostat balloons that we have in the sky, that are our eyes in the sky, they've been taking them down one by one by one. I think there's only 2 left in the state of Texas right now. You may know, right, if there's any more than that. So what's one of the most important strategic advantages our law enforcement has on the southern border? Your eyes in the sky. You can't be in every inch of the border every minute of the day. So you take down the eyes in the sky, you're blind. Right? And so they had those balloons strategically placed so that you could see all those areas that were difficult to cover. Well, they're gone. And what did you say when they were taken down? You didn't even know what happened. Greg Abbott, Dan Patrick, Ken Paxton. But who's in the Texas Senate? Who's in the House? I mean, where was the outcry? Why were those aerostat balloons taken down? Oh, because we don't have the money to run them. Let me understand that, okay? So we've got millions and millions and millions of dollars to spend on migrant care for people who are not citizens of this country, but we don't have any money to secure the border for the citizens. What? And you say, what can I do? Oh, gee. I mean, let's start right there. Let's start with what's happening on the southern border. So the day after one of those aerostat balloons came down, there was a cartel incursion across the border, armed men, all the rest of it. They even had a boat with miniguns on it on the river for their extraction after their operation. You know how we knew about it? Because the Mexican police, law enforcement called us and told us that it was happening, told us where to find them. We couldn't even see it. You know, I say to people, if you leave your front door open at night, might be a lot of nice people that come visit, right? But who's going to do that? No one will do that. It would be insane. Because you know, if your door is wide open, it's not just going to be good people that come through that door. And even those good people, they control nothing. The Mexican cartels today control more than 90 to 95% of the global trade in narcotics in every country of the world. They are the most powerful transnational criminal organizations that have ever existed. Ever. And why? Because what is the number one currency of every street gang in the world? It's drugs. So you don't just control your faction of Sinaloa or your plaza on the Mexican side. You control every street in America and every country on earth. And who are your greatest allies? The Chinese and the people within this country who are working with them. That's who your greatest allies are. You realize we have people in the children in the foster care system in America today because of fentanyl. Children who lost both parents to fentanyl. Parents who've lost 3 of their kids because they took a Xanax that they got from a friend. And it wasn't a Xanax, was it? It was baby formula with fentanyl in it. These are fake pills. How do they make them? Oh, with dyes that come from China, so it's the right color. With pill presses that come from China, so it's got the right markings on it. With precursor chemicals that come from China to make the narcotic in the first place. How did they learn? China sent pharmacists to Mexico, to Sinaloa. How do we know? Because when DEA was raiding these fentanyl labs, they were finding the Chinese pharmacists there. Problem with fentanyl and meth, these are chemical substances. They don't grow in the ground like marijuana and poppies and heroin and cocaine, right? You can't fly over and look at the crop and estimate what the yield is going to be that year and what the street price is going to be and what you need to do to control it. You don't have that ability. And where are the fentanyl labs? Well, they're in apartment buildings in Acapulco and in Cabo. Please, the amount of people that come to me and say, I went on vacation to Mexico and I had the best time and it was great and it was so safe and I'm definitely going back with my family. Good luck. Because you know who you'll never bump into on your vacation in Mexico? You'll never bump into anyone from the State Department with their kids, or from DOD with their kids, or from the FBI with their kids. You know why? Because they know that if it goes wrong in Mexico, you're dead. And it's over. And there's nowhere to turn. Because that country is controlled by the cartels, who do the most unspeakable things to each other and to those people. In Houston, when that guy went next door and just killed that family, right in, Plum Grove? I just went to Plum Grove. What did they find in that guy's house? Shrines to Santa Muerta. Right? This is a cult. These are cults. This is a global cult. And they worship the darkest forces that exist. When you eat the heart out of a 14-year-old boy, you know, and chop off 8 people's heads and kick them around the bathroom and bludgeon them with sledgehammers and you're laughing as you chop up the body parts, throwing them on the fire. That's nothing, right? That's just a mild version of it. I'm not even going to tell you, I'm not even going to go into the details of what they do to little babies. You know, how they like them to bleed and what they do to make sure that when they're raped, they bleed as much as possible. I mean, they take everything that you think is terrible and they have 400 ways to make it worse. It is unspeakable. There are brothels where they do this. In Germany, you know, and in the UK. I don't know about this country, but it's quite possible. These are the people that we have allowed to pour over the border, buy up real estate. Roanoke, Virginia, murder rate went through the roof. Why do you think that is? Because CJNG owns half of Roanoke. They're not stupid. They know how to hide. They take medical marijuana and legal dispensaries and they hide behind them. You know who's right there with them? The Chinese. You know, the Chinese, if you want to really learn about this, there's a book written by 2 Chinese colonels in 1999 called Unrestricted Warfare. They just did an updated version. The Chinese are practicing immigration warfare, illegal immigration warfare. This has been weaponized. Why do you think the UN is handing out a roadmap to cross every country of the world to get to the United States? If what you really wanted was just to get out of your country, why couldn't you stop somewhere else? It's not about their safety. And if you think these people are being used, they mean nothing. And how do they do it? With the NGOs. Go back to the Federal Reserve Act of 1917, when they created 501(c)(3)s as tax exempt. That was the establishment of the money laundering system that the Ford family and the Knight Foundation, and the Rockefeller Foundation, and the Clinton Foundation, and the Obama Foundation, and the Bush Foundation, all of them. These people are laundering money through these NGOs. And these NGOs are the enforcement arm of the global government. They're everywhere. Why is the EFF, the Electronic Freedom Frontier, or no, the Animal Rights Federation, why are they in, like, I don't know, 97 countries? Why is the Open Society Foundation in 120 countries? Because this is their local government that they're trying to put on the ground everywhere, creating loyalty networks. I mean, you really think in Afghanistan, where 80% of the women are beaten by their husbands, that there's a transgender movement? Seriously, I mean, come on. Women are still wearing burqas in most of that country. They're imprisoned in their homes. The shame of the American legacy in Afghanistan. The shame of it. And yet we just moved on, right? We just moved on, except almost every day I get updates on another soldier killed, another police commando killed. People that we trained, that fought side by side with us, that gave everything. And we didn't just abandon them, we gave their biometrics to their enemies, who were our enemies the day before. Why would you do that? People ask me. Well, I don't know, that can't be true. Why would they do that? Ask them. Tony Blinken echoed what Obama said, that the days where one nation tells the rest of the world what to do belong in the trash bin of history. You can look that up, more or less word for word. That was what Obama said. They don't believe in a superpower. They believe in one world, a godless entity supported by autonomous drones and artificial intelligence. There's a gentleman there with his hand up.
Yeah, with cracks showing in the legacy media every day, getting bigger and bigger, and I think we're all interested to see what Tucker Carlson does on Twitter. Even with your Twitter bio, like, no one owns you. How do regular people find more journalists like that are independent, not beholden to some kind of corporate or media giant? Is there any sort of like list or registry, or how do we find those people?
No, it's an interesting question, because there isn't a list. The truth is, it's hard work, right? You're just gonna have to put some work into it. That's not a great answer, but it's the truth. I'm working to establish Press Club USA, which will attempt to provide some kind of registry for that. It's really going to give accreditation to journalists. Like, if you're James O'Keefe You've been a journalist, you've done some of the most important journalistic work this country has ever seen, and you're labeled a far-right activist by the New York Times, so you don't get to be a journalist. Luke is an independent journalist. I mean, not the same kind of journalist as me. He's, you know, he does comedy and satire and that kind of thing, but people on the left or in mainstream media or legacy media who went into the Capitol, they didn't get arrested, but people like Luke, Baked Alaska, you know, other journalists on the right did. So maybe if they had a press pass that identified them as a journalist, that would have helped, right? And so that's one of the things I'm trying to remedy, because I get a press pass from CBS. I get a press pass from the Foreign Press Association. If I worked on Capitol Hill, I could get one from, you know, there's an organization there that issues press passes, or from the White House Correspondents Association, I can get a press pass. There's nobody's gonna give me a press pass today. That's not gonna happen. Now, I'm well established as a journalist, so people don't question my credentials, but what if you're not? What if you're Andy No, who's probably the most prolific, most reliable journalist on Antifa and left-wing extremism and violence in the world, right? There's no journalist that knows more about it than he does. There might be some that equal him, but no one knows more. And again, branded a far-right activist and a white supremacist, by the way, even though he's the Asian son of Vietnamese immigrants, and openly gay, too. You know, so Andy No doesn't get that. He's got nothing that proves that he's a journalist, except for years of work. But they dismiss that, right? And if you just read the New York Times and you just watch CNN, well then you think, okay, Andy No's a far-right activist. But so I'm trying to create a structure, as in the press club, where journalists can get accreditation. We can have awards that can recognize the work, because all that work, all those years, and they've never ever, you know, Andy used to ask me all the time, what's it like at the Emmys? And I used to say, it's a bunch of assholes standing around telling everyone how great they are. And he used to say, but like, what do you wear? And what is the food? And he was always fascinated by it. And I said, Andy, like, why do you care? And then I realized he's never been invited to the party. Ever. He's been working all of these years. He's been beaten. They tried to murder him time and again. But I can't, and I shouldn't have to be the only person doing that. There's other journalists out there that know what real journalism is and that are willing to fight. But they need a home. And that home, if people are vetted and their work is vetted and they meet a certain standard, will help all of you navigate towards, you know, that. It doesn't mean, it's not meant to be definitive, but it can at least be a guide, right? And so that's what I'm trying to work on. But I'm also trying to keep a roof over my children's heads. And when you know, in much of this, when you're in the fight, a lot of people don't get paid. And so it's very hard. And I need to fundraise for the press club, I need to fundraise for my show, which I'm trying to do on my own. And I suck at fundraising, by the way. I'm not a fundraiser. My husband keeps saying, we gotta raise money for, you know, Afghan police, we're still trying to get people out. And I was like, don't look at me. I'm begging you not to look at me. I was raised not to talk about money. My mother said that was not polite. So I'm not the one to reach out my hand and say, please give me some money. I suck at that. And it's not what I was born to do. I don't know how to do it. I mean, people say to me, just start your own show, you have a podcast. But sticking up a microphone and mouthing off about my opinions on what I read on the internet that day, it's not journalism. Doesn't mean there isn't a place for it. There is a place for it. It can be very valuable. But I'm not Tucker Carlson, right? I mean, I don't do that. I don't sit there and give you my opinion, you know, on certain events. And no, what I do is I go out and I do long-form investigative work and we film things. And it's expensive, you know. And now people are so used to, oh, well, you can just have your own podcast and you can make, you know, oodles of money this way. Look at, you know, I don't know, you'll be on Twitter like Jack Posobiec and you can have endorsements and you can make a lot of money. But who's creating that real journalism then? Are you all just going to do that? Then who's going and investigating and writing, and you know the beauty of the discipline of writing where every word counts. That's what I learned in 60 Minutes, and it took years to learn it. But when you can say in just one line, okay, Luke, don't kill me, but for example, when I was trying to get the crew to understand what we needed to film with Luke, and I said, you know, Comfort, Texas, this is outlaw country. Haven't had a police station here, well, ever. Cut off from his family, cut off from his friends. It was the outlaws of Texas that took him in. That's what I mean about every word counts. You just learned about a place you knew nothing about. Didn't take a lot, but I had to know the history to know that. I had to understand the culture to know that. I had to know Luke to know that. I had to know his story. I had to know the counter story. I had to know the counter narrative. I had to know, you know, I had to ask 400,000 questions, and I had to read, and I had to watch, and I had to listen. And it is hard work to do it at that level. But if I give up doing it at that level, and I do a podcast, where God forbid I opine, I mean, first of all, that's going to be shut down quickly. I'll tell you what I really think. But more importantly, who's going to do that? Because 60 Minutes, for example, just did a story on Ray Epps, right? The guy who's the Fed who's not the Fed. Okay, so I couldn't bear to watch it because it's still a gaping wound in my soul. And so I said, I made my producers watch it. I said, so who did they interview besides Ray Epps and his wife? And they said, no one. I said, what? And it was, ironically, I'm doing a story on Ray Epps. That's actually more a story about being framed. That's what it's really about. And Ray Epps is a good place to begin, because you need a small story to tell a big one. So I'm not doing a dissertation, I'm not doing a documentary. Let me tell you a story about what happened on January 6th. It's nothing like you've heard. And it starts in a very dark place. A place that it's the least that you would expect. It begins a week before January 6th with 100 undercover operatives being trained for an operation. Right now I'm telling you a story. I'm not lecturing you, I'm not doing the news, I'm not giving you, opining. I'm trying to tell you a story. And every single word matters. There's no meaningless transition lines that get you from one part to the other because it's television. It's actually, it has to be researched, it has to be accurate, and I don't operate to the same standard as everybody else. If they've tried to kill me over and over again. They can't do it, because none of what they say is true. But if I do it, if I slip my own wrist, it's done. So that's what they want me to do. And let me tell you, it's a full-time job just sorting the wheat from the chaff. The people that come, I got whistleblowers up the wazoo. I got stories of woe, I got tales of, this and that. And I've got to figure out who everybody is. Why are they telling me this? What are they telling me? Is it real? Honestly, today, when I get sent things by some person I've never heard of, I don't even watch them anymore, because I don't have the bandwidth. I'm dealing with enough of the stuff we actually know. We actually know that the American people were framed on January 6th. We actually know that the Republicans were part of that. So let me work on something concrete, right? Let me work on that. And I got that letter with Brianna Balcom. I'm not going to say the name. Because I'm still working on this, and there's lives, literally lives involved. But those are real things that I can investigate, some of this stuff, can I prove there are clones and doubles? Hell no. Are you kidding me? No, I got nothing. Don't even ask me about it, I got nothing. Okay? Because it's too hard dealing with the other stuff. Paul.
Yeah, Brandon, on a show, he had Gordon Chang on the other day, and he says that Chinese military-aged men are coming across the southern border and the northern border as well, about 100.
Well, Gordon Chang's a couple weeks late. I already reported that.
But you did.
Okay, there's a little competitiveness still left in me. Okay, so let me tell you about that. So, Justin Trudeau, right after Biden was elected, I believe, changed the laws so Chinese don't need visas in Mexico and in Canada anymore, I believe. Something along those lines. Basically, he opened the northern border, you know, the transit route through Canada for a lot of people, not just the Chinese. So the Swanton port of entry in the north, that's what people often don't realize, is that Border Patrol is concerned with what happens between the ports of entry. So when you see Border Patrol figures, that's only a portion of what happens on the southern border. The official ports of entry are run by the Office of Field Operations, OFO. If you really want the true picture of how many people are coming across, you've got to look at between the ports of entry and at the ports themselves. And what the Biden administration did in December, they created the CBP One app. So what that does is allows illegal immigrants to file paperwork through this app before they get to the southern border, right? They can do it in their home country, they can do it on the journey, they can do it when they get to Mexico, they can do whatever the hell they want. And what they do then is they say, oh yeah, you're gonna love this. NGOs, and a few government people, but really mostly NGOs, over the border into Mexico, and they process all the people with CBP One app. And they send them where? They don't send them to take their chances in the Rio Grande. No, you're official now. So they send you through the Office of Field Operations, across through the port of entry. So now when you see the Border Patrol figures, it's a lot less. Well, it's because they made them legal in Mexico. They took illegal immigrants and they made them legal, and they sent them through the official bridges so that you wouldn't figure out the scale of the infiltration. On top of that, we've known for a long time that the Chinese use, so certain countries use certain routes because the cartels channel them. That's where they have to go. So McAllen has traditionally been the route for Chinese hackers. Okay, so who are the people that you want in your country? If you actually look at #1 nation for cyber attacks on the United States is China. Okay, that's law enforcement briefing just a few weeks ago, that was reconfirmed. But where do many, some people say most, I can't verify that, many or most, but a significant portion of those attacks, cyber attacks, come from where? Inside the United States. So to do that, you got to infiltrate your hackers across the border. Well, they're pouring across the border. They would come through McAllen at a rate of anywhere between 50 to 70 to over 100 a day through McAllen. So when Trudeau opened Canada, they started pouring through Swanton, through the official port of entry there. They still come through McAllen, except about 8 weeks ago, they doubled the numbers coming through McAllen. And then Rio Grande City, which is a tiny station, about 8 weeks ago, they started seeing 50 to 70 Chinese every day. And it's been every single day, without a break. In fact, last weekend, on one day, there were 130 Chinese that came through that day. So what, you know, if you look at that in military terms, what does that represent? Well, a surge, right? I mean, isn't that what Petraeus did in Iraq? Surged forces in? Well, you could say it's a surge. So people say, well, what are they surging for? Well, we don't know. We don't know. I mean, some of them could be hackers. We know that most of them are military-age males, because that is just about the only thing Border Patrol actually records. So we have no repatriation agreements with China, with the CCP, right? So none of them get sent home. So every single Chinese person that crosses that southern border is in the United States, right? So what they do is they sit them down for 3-4 hours. They ask them questions. The guy could say, I'm Bruce Lee's grandson. How would you know? First of all, no border agents speak Mandarin. There's hardly any translators. By the way, 156 countries across the southern border, we don't even have teachers who speak those languages. How are you going to educate those kids? You know, never mind the 65,000 kids that the Biden administration can't account for. So, I mean, I'm not kidding you. When I say femoral artery, I mean, that's what we've done. We've cut our femoral artery and we're bleeding out. I mean, this country is literally disintegrating before our eyes. Every single system that we have is overwhelmed in Texas right now. Every single system. And that guy in Plum Grove who went next door and murdered those people, had the cult stuff in his house, he was part of a sect. He was part of the enforcement arm of one of the cartels. I won't say it because it's not public yet. And they all have enforcement arms now because they have their own special operations units who literally just go and specialize in killing people in the most brutal ways possible in order to prevent. They use fear, right? That's their whole basis of everything they do. How do I stop someone overthrowing me? Fear. How do I stop another cartel coming into my territory? Fear. So that's the motive behind the violence. It gets more and more and more violent because they become less and less fearful. So you have to come up with new and inventive ways to absolutely terrify everyone into oblivion. So Chinese coming across the southern border, vast majority of them are military-aged males. If you add up the figures for the past 8 weeks alone, that's thousands. Absolutely thousands, just on the southern border without even factoring in the northern border. And crickets from the Biden administration.
Is there anything the military can do?
Yes. Yes.
I know we have a commander in chief. One last question right here.
Yes, this question was, is there anything the military can do? I'll try and make it quick so I can take your question. Yes. It's appearing increasingly obvious that there are two militaries. All right? I mean, obviously, the ones who wear high heels, they're done. Okay? Those people we don't care about. Mark Milley, don't care about him. I know vengeance is mine, said the Lord, but I do spend some time plotting. Then I try to give it to God. Okay, but what, for example, if the United States government declared the cartels foreign terrorist organizations, you could then use the Department of Defense and the military to go after the cartels. And that changes the game completely. Not least because you change the speed of reaction. You bring, our law enforcement, have you been to small towns in South Texas? I mean, please, they have one sheriff on duty. He's not even earning $20,000 a year. What are you gonna do? These people build their own communication systems, unique encrypted communication systems. They build a new one every other day. I mean, they can sit on a beach in Thailand and run their cartel operations remotely. Our local law enforcement doesn't stand a chance, besides which jurisdiction ends at the United States border. So everything we do in Mexico or anywhere else is at the behest of the national government. And by the way, they're run by the cartels, so oh yeah, that's not gonna work. Okay, so, and not only that, but they shut down intelligence sharing, they stripped US agents of diplomatic immunity. Nobody talks about that. That happened right when Biden was elected. And so, but what the military can do is bring the full resources of the Department of Defense to bear. Now they'll say, oh no, we can't have that. If you declare the cartels, I just spoke to a congressman about this. Because Gonzalez, by the way, from Texas, he tried to push in the latest immigration bill to have that designation. And he was crushed by his Republican colleagues on the Hill. I spoke to one of them, I said, no, by the way, because I have that kind of relationship with him. I felt a bit bad because he's exhausted. But I said, seriously, and he said, well, we can't have that because then they'll all be claiming asylum. I said, they're all claiming asylum now. What do you think they claim? Credible fear. You know, and they won't qualify for it because under the actual way the asylum laws are written for political asylum, terrorism doesn't qualify. But that's how, I mean, honestly, our congressmen, the next thing they've got is the budget, the next thing after that is the National Defense Authorization. I mean, forget about it. The Weaponization Committee is doing one transcribed interview a week. They've hired 0 staff. How many subpoenas have they issued? I don't know. I'm hoping that there's some covert thing going on there that they're trying to hide from us because on the surface, they're worthless. On the surface, until Marjorie Taylor Greene introduced articles of impeachment for Reagan and the assistant U.S. attorney in Washington, D.C. So honestly, the prayer is very important to me. I don't really know how to pray well. I get very distracted in the middle of my prayers, and then I try to remember what I was praying for, and then I start asking God a lot of questions, and then I remember I'm supposed to be praying. And so basically I suck at it, although I am not giving up. And I can feel the spiritual attacks, and I really think the only reason I'm still around is prayer. People say that you have security at your house. There's no amount of security is going to keep out a cartel. This is their army. And when they show up at your house, You know, they rape your children to death in front of you. That's the kind of thing they do. So do I fear things? Yes, sometimes at night, you know, I lie there and think about what have I done to my children. Sometimes I think, wow, what have I done bringing them into this? But here we are. So I really do. The prayers do mean a lot. They say that prayer is very powerful, and I believe it is. And so that's really. I don't like to ask people for things. I've been taking care of myself all my life. My mom was exhausted by the time I reached my teen years. She checked out, very loving, but it was like, fix your own dinner, you know? Which wasn't a bad thing at all. But I am on Locals. Thank you, Mary Beth. Mary Beth's very good at asking my money, by the way. I warn you. And I'm on Twitter. But when the press club is fundraising, when you hear about that, if you can support that, if you can support the January 6th prisoners, that would make a very significant difference. And if you can find the real organizations, right, that are doing real work, seriously, can you keep the pornography out of the schools? Because I mean, that would mean a lot to me. Because I already know I'm in this fight. I give it to God, and somehow, even though I'm not employed, I still have managed to keep, to keep everything going, because I'm the breadwinner. And so I would just say, thank you. You know, your being here is the support that I need, because when I start to think, okay, wow, not even Marjorie Taylor Greene is returning my calls, like, is no, you know, because I'm not on Fox and I'm not on 60 Minutes. This is mean, you know, is my work becoming increasingly irrelevant? How am I going to keep making it relevant? So then I go to check in for a flight at the airport, and the Southwest attendant climbs over the counter and wraps her arms around me and starts sobbing and praying. And I'm like, oh shit, I gotta keep going. Because again, you have few options. Okay, thank you so much.